about.
This is inspired probably by Tom Ross, and it has been a winning victory for the boss. So the boss needs to know who he is.
Exactly.
A sleeveless monster.
Yeah.
He's going to start off here with a Soldier of the Pantheon to get things going. Brian's going to accelerate with an Elvish Mystic. Round number 12 underway.
I guess Boswell now charging for tickets to the gun show rather than just giving them away for free.
A real shame.
Oh, I agree.
It's a Fleece main line here for the boss, so he's off to a beautiful, beautiful start. Looks like his green-white deck from the previous Standard season right now.
Yep. I mean, there's a Windswept Heath where there should have been some other anemic green-white dual land, but it's the same start.
Really is. Really, really is. Brian's going to be put under the gun here right away. We know that. Boswell's deck very, very aggressive. Brian familiar with this archetype. Boswell's changed it up a little bit, but remember, Brian has been championing Abs on aggro for a long time, has won a PTQ with it, to qualify for the Pro Tour yet again, so he's very familiar with this strategy. He's going to try to ramp right by it, and he's off to a great start.
And Boswell, with, as you mentioned, his green-white start, unfortunately this time his deck is backing it up with a variety of double black cards.
Yeah.
And he's running into that issue right now.
But hey, this is part of what he signed up for when you played this deck and green-white in the previous season. The mana can mess with you and can cause you to lose.
Yeah, and this is a really bad stumbling point here because the Valorous stances that Andy has in his hand, they aren't really good in this matchup. It's hard to imagine many matchups in Standard where the card has no application. This is pretty close to one of them. There's not a lot of creatures to exile in Brian's deck, and Ugin, it doesn't prevent anything from that either because it exiles.
Valor's stance is going to get a little bit of use right now. Going to take care of Courser of Crucifix. You see Brian's top card is a Sylvan Caryatid. Courser not netting a land, and Brian not playing a land. So he's having a little bit of mana issues here as Boswell will draw a card. Looks like it was a copy of Warden of the First Tree. Brian going to very quickly block. 3 damage is going to come across via the Fleece main line. And now the First Tree will join the party. So that'll give Boswell something to do in the meantime. But you can see his hand. Another copy of Valor Stance, Rashasha Death Dealer, Siege Rhino, and a card he's a long way away from in casting in Bile Blight.
At least fortunately for Boswell, Brian's play last turn was Courser of Crucifix rather than Frontier Siege.
Yeah.
He's representing that he's missing land drops right now and doesn't have Frontier Siege, which is pretty good news all told.
Keep in mind, too, with the Warden of the First Tree, it turns from a 1-1 to a 3-3. A 3-3, quite powerful on this board.
Oh, for sure. Brian can't block it effectively. Even if Andrew misses a land drop again next turn, he at least has something productive to do.
And that's what's really nice about this Abzan aggro deck and most of the creatures that it does play is Brian's going to play a Commune with the Gods. So we'll take a look at these cards. An Eidolon of Blossoms, a Swamp, a Temple of Malady, a Windswept Heath, and an Ugin.
This has been the element of the deck that Brian has criticized the most to us. The Commune with the Gods, he says, has really been an underperformer.
Yeah, has not liked it, has said he's sideboarded out in most of his matchups. And of course, in week 1, you're not going to get everything right.
Yep.
Boswell draws a card. Looks like it was a copy of Anafenza. So not a land to play, not a spell to cast, but can pump up his Warden, so at least he has something to do with his mana.
Assuming that Brian blocks the Soldier of the Pantheon with his Sylvan Caryatid, it's still 2 turns. Brian had some chump blockers, but again, missing land drops. He may be in a position where he has to start blocking with some of his mana creatures, and that's a big victory for Boswell.
Yeah. So the Warden is a 3-3 now. Boswell with no spells to cast. He's hoping Brian's going to continue to have difficulty and fumble around her a little bit as he'll draw a card. Looks like he found a copy of Temple of Malady. And talking with Brian about this deck a little bit too over the course of his run here, running off 9 straight matches, he said, I wish I had another land in my deck. He's got 23. He would like to play 24 in the future.
Yeah. The deck definitely needs to make its land drops, but on the other side of it, you also need to make sure there's enough action.
Yeah.
What I think that means is you have to really question the cards that are in the middle, which Commune of the Gods absolutely is. It's not a land, nor is it a high-impact card. I think those kind of cards probably need to be turned into either more mana or more high-impact stuff.
Yeah.
Arguably, Eidolon of the Blossoms also has the same problem, but I think that card's powerful enough where you pay the cost.
There are certainly games where that card will keep you in it or win it for you.
Exactly. So I think that passes the test, even though it's not mana or, high impact in the way that Ugin or Hornet Queen is. Commune with the Gods, I'm skeptical of.
4 mana going to be tapped here by Brian. It's an Eidolon. It's time to draw a card. He's going to try to turtle up a little bit here until he can get to those big spells. We're going to go back Boswell's way. He'll draw. Can you find black mana yet? So important. No, Siege Rhino instead.
Perfect.
Boswell going to survey the board, see what his best attacks are in this situation.
Should have stuck to Sky Lashers and Smiters, I guess.
At least they'd be castable. Though these cards are a little bit more powerful than those.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yep, everybody come on in. Hard to pass this up.
Exactly, and Brian gets to not lose one of his mana creatures here. He can chump block with the Eidolon, put Caryatid in front of the soldier, as you see this block here, and then in the most optimistic scenario, he draws a 7th mana, which then he can play with Hornet Queen and stabilize the board.
It's a murderous cut, a timely one at that. Gonna delve away a few cards, leave Ugin and friends in the graveyard, and a Valorous Stance will counter that murderous cut. So as bad as Valorous Stance has looked like it would be in this game, it's been useful, and that demonstrates a really good Magic card.
Yeah, it's been fine in spite of this being about the worst matchup for it, which is really impressive.
Brian will draw a card. Look, there was a copy of a Hornet Queen there.
The problem here is that Brian really needs the 7th mana this turn because he probably has to start blocking with his mana creatures, and once that starts happening, there's no way for him to get to Hornet Queen.
Hornet Queen's the way to stabilize things. At least that's the plan. 4 mana here for Brian. He will play Eidolon yet again. He'll go Cantrippin. Courser of Krufix the draw. And he does just pass the turn back over to the Boz, who will draw. Soldier of the Pantheon is what he's found. Take a long look at that hand. Plenty of uncastables there. But what he's got in play has been good enough so far. He's going to hope it continues to be good and send them all in the red zone again. Sometimes Magic is very simple.
Yep, and this is the tough part now. Both the 3 power creatures have to be blocked because Brian's at 3, meaning that assuming he doesn't have a removal spell here, he has to commit a Caryatid to combat, and once he loses that, it's hard for him to get back into the game.
And the big question is Brian willing to go down to 1? He's going to survey the board and figure out what his outs are here, but as you mentioned, a Caryatid is going to leave the battlefield here.
I don't think there's a big difference between 3 and 1. Thoughtseize is still lethal, and Abzan Charms is still predicated on a creature getting through in combat, which Brian already can't beat.
I suppose the Caryatid on the soldier is a free block anyway, so he won't have to go down to 1, though he will lose 2 creatures. The follow-up now is a soldier. And a passing of the turn. Brian will draw. Courser can still do some work here.
Courser can do some work. He only has 1 murderous cut in his deck, so that was the tempo swing I thought that he might be able to put together, but there's only the 1 copy.
See Brian looking at his hand, seeing how things have just not come together this game.
Well, I think that Andrew Boswell could say the same thing.
That's completely
a handful
fair.
Of black cards.
That's completely fair.
No 3rd land.
I think it's very important Courser finds a land here, and it does. That's big. He's going to go up to 4. We'll see what the next card is. That'll be a Thoughtseize. That one's not so good.
I think Brian's still going to be in a spot where he's losing mana creatures, though, and
Yep.
once that starts happening, it's so hard for his deck to catch up.
Back to the Boz we go. He'll take a draw. Temple of Malady right on time.
Well, that is significant because Andrew has multiple Siege Rhinos in hand, so it's possible if he can sneak in some more damage, even if Brian gets to Hornet Queen or Ugin, it may not matter.
Yeah, Siege Rhino playing the role of kind of like a lightning bolt to finish the game.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure Boswell will prefer to have a Swamp or an Urborg, but at this point, drawing a black source of mana is still pretty good.
Everybody into the red zone yet again here for Boz. Let Brian decide how he wants to block. Brian get a survey, but again, this is a situation where he's probably going to lose some of those mana accelerants, and that's the big problem here.
Yeah.
He had a window for a few turns to be able to find one of his big haymakers and cast it, or maybe find a land to cast a Hornet Queen, but it didn't materialize.
And Brian's trying to figure out some way to to navigate this, it's just going to be hard. I mean, he can also try to play towards Doomwake Giant, I guess. There is an incentive for him to leave as many 1-toughness creatures in play on Boswell's side of the table as possible, so that Doomwake Giant cleans up the most stuff, so he can preserve his life total and preserve his mana creatures. But I imagine if Doomwake was in Brian's hand, we would have seen it by now.
And it would be rather good.
It'd be a big blocker, would have gotten a soldier off the table.
Yeah.
I imagine it would have been cast by now.
This is that situation as a player where you're looking at the board and you're trying to figure out, all right, what are my outs? I know I'm drawing a Thoughtseize. That's basically a dead draw. What can I do to stay alive as long as possible? Try to maximize everything that Courser can do and somehow make it out of this thing. Well, there are your blocks right there. Brian going to lose an Elvish Mystic, but he'll take care of his Soldier of the Pantheon. But what's got to be really scary is that play right there, that Temple. That'll allow Boswell to scry. And that's black mana as well.
Yeah, it was not clear that Brian was in the game, even with Boswell just on a plains and a forest. And now Brian knows that the second wave of Boswell's hand will be coming shortly.
Boswell going to leave that card on top and pass it back over to BBD, who's at 1 and drawing a Thoughtseize. Take a look at the top card now. That's a Frontier Siege. Not what the doctor ordered. Bob's going to take a look at the Siege. We will do the same, as you have to imagine it's going to come up at some point in this matchup. It's really the glue that holds this deck together.
It is the big jump, and it's pretty hard to interact with. Not that many people are destroying enchantments, at least game 1.
But Brian has not been able to get it deployed here in the first game. There's never been that window to cast it. But when this deck has Frontier Siege on turn 3, it does some very disgusting things the following turns.
Yeah, you can just go off with Eidolon of Blossoms plus other enchantments, or you can go all the way up to your big stuff.
There is an Eidolon of Blossoms. Top card now is an Elvish Mystic. And Brian can only pass the turn back. Boswell going to untap and draw. We'll see what he kept on top of his deck here in just a moment. A Sandstep Citadel. Not a land that enters the battlefield untapped, but it's that inevitability.
Exactly. He still can play Anafenza this coming turn. He gets a good attack. And then the lock of Siege Rhino the following turn.
And again, Brian's so familiar with this Abzan aggro deck, playing at the Players' Championship, winning a PTQ with it earlier this year. He knows there's a Siege Rhino over there. It's almost impossible that there isn't. He's just hoping that Boswell doesn't have the lands to play it. But what does he keep on top of the Temple then? Damage going to resolve. Some creatures will bite the dust. Looks like Boswell's going to deploy an Anafenza. There's his Sandstep Citadel. And Brian's going to draw his Elvish Mystic. Top card of his deck now is a Sylvan Caryatid. Yet again, not a land. And in just a moment here, I think BBD is going to come to the same conclusion. This is going to be his last turn of the game.
Yeah, at this point, you know, on the board at least, Boswell doesn't even need to deploy the Siege Rhino. The removal spell in his hand also sufficient.
Hero's Downfall going to go after Anafenza. And what's nice here for Boswell is that if he's not familiar with the deck that Brian is playing, I like this play of attacking first because he just found out Hero's Downfall's in his opponent's deck.
Yep.
You know, he may not have found that out otherwise. He could have just very quickly just played Siege Rhino and said, you're dead. But instead he says, well, I'll go to my attack step because there's no reason not to. Maybe get some information, which he picked up with Hero's Downfall being cast. And now I cast my Siege Rhino and walk out the door knowing that, okay, you have Murderous Cut and Hero's Downfall in some numbers for game 2 and 3.
Exactly. You can probably guess it's there, but you don't know for sure. Maybe it's Murderous Cut, maybe it's some other weird removal spell. And by moving into combat there, you get to pick up a free piece of information. It's a small thing, but it's good to know.
To the sideboards we will go, and we will start with Braun. He'll be on the play for game number 2.
3 copies of Read the Bones, 3 copies of Nissa, 2 copies of Garruk, Apex Predator, and Ugin the Spirit Dragon, 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, a Thoughtseize, and 3 copies of Bioblight. I like bringing in the extra creature removal, the 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, 3 copies of Bioblight. I think there's an argument for bringing in Garrick in lieu of having Hornet Queen as one of your big payoffs, or maybe you want both of them, because it's reasonable for Boswell to have Bioblight in his deck, but Garrick may be much harder for him to answer.
Take a look at Boswell's side of things here. 2 copies of Hunt the Hunter, 2 Glare of Heresy, 3 Drowning Sorrows, an Utter End, a Murderous Cut, 4 Thoughtseizes, and 2 Nissa Worldwakers. Typically like Thoughtseize against ramp decks, take the one big thing they're going to ramp to.
I think so, and Boswell also may not be 100% certain what's going on with Brian's deck. There's some weirdness there, so the information's valuable. And yeah, just breaking up his big draws, whether or not you get a key mana accelerator or the big thing he's playing towards, I think that's pretty solid. The rest of the sideboard is not that exciting. I suppose you could bring in the Utter End, but given that Boswell's deck is aggressive and low to the ground, Utter End is not as free for him to bring in as it is for, say, Abzan mid-range, where your deck is all about casting 4 and 5 mana spells anyway. I think the 4 Thoughtseize is coming for sure. Past that, he might not touch anything.
Fair enough. Well, Season 1 is certainly underway. Both these players are a part of it. We saw last year Brian actually qualify for the Players' Championship via Season 1. Columbus is in the books. Joe Lissette won that tournament. Philadelphia also in the books. That was done by Stephen Darrell Ayers and his Kurt Apes. We're going to figure out who's going to win this tournament in D.C., along with Legacy next weekend in Indy.
Yeah, which will be our first Legacy Open post-ban, so that should be a fun tournament to cover. We're off the following weekend for regionals. Make sure to head over to starcitygames.com/regionals for more information. The following week, we go to Houston for the first time in Open Series history. LA after that. Baltimore for our first ever 2-day Modern Open. After that, a Standard Grand Prix in Miami. We have information posted about that. You can check out our advertisements for that as well for more information pertaining to that event. 2 weekends after that, we're in Dallas for a Standard Open, and then Richmond, the Season 1 Invitational with Standard and Legacy as the invitational formats, and a Standard Open Series at the end of the month with me, you, and Matthias Hunt in the booth.
Going to qualify 2 players for the Players' Championship. Could be BBD yet again. Could be the Boz as well. Boswell having a fantastic tournament, opening up the season quite well. Getting it done with some aggro decks with sketchy mana bases, but if they work, as we saw with green-white last year and with Abzan aggro this year, they are very powerful.
And even when the mana doesn't work, I mean, that game, his mana most certainly did not work.
Sure.
He eventually got to cast a Siege Rhino, but on quite a bit of a delay. But 2-power 1-drop into Fleecebane line into another 3-power creature, some combat tricks, and that was good enough.
Do want to thank you guys for tuning in at home. If you do want to join us at Twitter at SCG Live, hashtag SCGDC all weekend long as we are in round number 12 of 15 of competition here. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Nick Miller on the sideboard, and the rest of the SCG Live crew here from the nation's capital. Going to crown a champion, $5,000, 25 Open Series points, and an invite to our Season 1 Invitational. Could be one of these 2 great players, as Boswell is currently up a game. Deck didn't perform all that well in game number 1, but it was good enough as Brian stumbled and fumbled around. And we'll see if Brian can actually ramp out to a Frontier Siege and then start dropping those Hornet Queens and Ugins.
Yeah, both of these decks were not firing on all cylinders there. But Boswell got enough of an early advantage, and Brian never got to any of his significant plays.
Not the prettiest game of Magic I've ever seen, but, you know, whatever it takes. Not every game is going to be how you draw it up.
Right.
That we know. But Brian has bounced back very well in this tournament. Again, started 0-2. We watched him round 1 yesterday. Lost that match after playing 3 Ugins in 1 game, and it wasn't good enough. Lost the second match. No buys coming in this tournament. He's not within our top 32 players right now. But he has bounced back very nicely. Won 9 matches in a row, looking to make it 10. He's very quickly going to keep his hand. Boswell will look at his. We'll see if he's happy with what he's found.
It's interesting because Brian's obviously had a good performance here, and Brad's on pace for a money finish. And on camera, it has not been good sailing so far for this deck.
Deck hasn't won yet. Has not won a match on camera yet, but they have won outside of that. It's possible we're going to start things off here with the Warden of the first tree. See if Brian has an accelerant. Looks like he does. It'll be a copy of Sylvan Carry added. Back to Boswell we'll go. A little bit more of an expensive hand. You see a copy of Utter End over there. But again, this is what makes the Warden a nice addition to this deck, is because though he doesn't have a creature to play on turn 2, he can do exactly this. Make his creature into a 3/3, get some damage, and get the ball rolling.
I think that a 1/1 for 1 is already halfway decent for this deck a lot of the time, because you just need to get something on the board. You need to start attacking. And then being able to fill in the gaps when you have nothing else to do is so good.
Courser of Crewfix will come in, and we'll bring a land along with it. There's a forest trigger, gain a little bit of life. Land of War Waste will be the draw next turn. There for BBD. Going to go back to the Boz. The Boz will draw. Copy of Boon Satyr. And in he comes, confidently. And I love this attack. It's basically a freebie.
It is. Are you willing to risk an Obzon charm here?
The answer to that is yes. Boswell brings the card forward in his hand, making it seem like it's an Obzon charm. But it's not. It's an Utter End. He'll be using that one later, you have to imagine. For now, it's an Anafenza. That one's no slouch right now either.
Getting your Warden up to a 4/4 is really, really nice when your opponent's trying to block with Courser Crucifix.
No more waste was the draw. Force will come into play off a Courser. Braun will gain a little bit more life. Frontier Siege is the top card of the deck. Looks like he may have a copy in his hand right now as well. Again, this ramping strategy, labeled Green-Black Constellation, and it certainly has a Constellation engine with Eidolon and Doomwake Giant, but it can go way above that.
And there's a little bit of awkwardness with the removal in Brian's hand right now because it's so double black heavy that I think he would like to play the Frontier Siege and kind of free that up a little bit to make deployment down the line easier, but he can't Frontier Siege and cast a double black removal spell in the same turn. So he's got to pick one or the other.
He's tapping some mana right now to play Hero's Downfall to get Anafenza off the table. Again, what kind of makes this compelling is that Brian is so familiar with Obzon aggro, given that he's played it so much over the past 2 months or so, that he knows what he's got to try to stop them from doing. He wasn't able to do it game 1. He's working his way towards doing it game 2, taking the opportunity here to get Anafenza off the board right now. And he's going to send it back over to Boswell.
He doesn't want to get hit with a Valorous stance.
Manic Influence to draw. That's what Boswell will deploy. Looks like he's going to take a point of damage to cast something here. It'll be an Utter End to get Courser off the table, clear the way for the Warden. Put Brian down to 16. But that's an Utter End that's not taking care of a Frontier Siege, which I think Brian's probably pretty happy about.
Well, I think that he would like to keep the Courser in play because Boswell really has nothing else going on besides the 3/3. But Brian has other stuff going on, so this is not the end of the world.
Also, you take a look at Brian's life total. 16's quite a bit this stage of the game.
He's gotten to block a lot. He's gotten to gain a couple points of life off of the Courser. He's got a lot of wiggle room.
There is the Siege. We'll see if Brian goes with Khans or Dragons. Khans it is. And now another Siege. Somebody's got a lot of mana. We'll see which one he's naming with that. Might go the Dragons route this time. Siege Rhino the draw for Boswell. Yep, one on Khans, one on Dragons. In the meantime, Boswell's going to bestow a Boon Satyr and get in for a whole mess of damage.
Now he just has to cross his fingers and hope that the follow-up isn't too bad,
Yep.
but typically it is.
When they have that much mana available, I would imagine Brian do something busted this turn. You can see he's got a Planeswalker over there in his hand, and Ugin. And he will deploy the Spirit Dragon. So he's going to tick that down, exile those permanents, and Ugin will stand tall on this battlefield. Boswell going to draw a card. It's a copy of Fleece Mainline.
Yeah, leaving Ugin in such a spot where it can handle a Siege Rhino on the follow-up is really nice.
Yeah. Sandsap Citadel will come down. There is Siege Rhino. So Boswell's going to go up to 19. Brian's going to go down to 6. It's going to take a few more of those Rhinos, I think, to get the job done this game, though.
Well, it isn't out. Brian's deck is not very good at gaining life past his copies of Courser Crucifix. So the issue here for Boswell is from this spot, it does not take Brian that long to turn around the game and actually kill him.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. There's a Garruk Apex Predator.
Okay.
Doesn't take long at all.
I revised my statement about the light game. You can gain plenty.
Gonna use the -3 on Garruk there. Destroy target creature. You gain life equal to the toughness. And now Brian's probably out of range.
Yeah, I don't think Boswell's coming back from this.
Unless Brian feels really frisky and uses his Garruk to kill his Ugin.
Right.
which would just be a demonstration of power at that point.
And Brian still got the Hornet Queen back up.
Sure.
So it's not even clear that's good enough.
This is what this deck is all about. Ramp to big stuff, and it's big stuff that your opponent likely cannot beat. As we saw in the first game, he wasn't able to do that fast enough, and he stumbled and fumbled around. This game, not a problem at all.
And a lot of it is different angles of attack. You know, you don't want to be all in on Ugin and have an opponent who can work around it. And we've seen the Abzan decks be able to do that, whether it's with Siege Rhinos or just random punk outs. So having Garrick and Hornet Queen and Ugin, it's a really nice mixture because it's hard to think of a combination of cards that can get through all that kind of stuff.
Brian gets to untap with his 2 Planeswalkers now. Looks like we've got a beast coming, which I was a little skeptical about us having yesterday, but I was proven wrong.
Oh,
There's a Courser.
SCG is just always prepared.
There is the Black Beast. Frontier Siege on top of the deck there from Courser. Brian hasn't even used his Ugin yet, but now he will. And that first ability, a Ghost Fire, will go upstairs. Put
Ooh.
Boswell down to 11.
Good reference.
Thank you. People call that a lightning bolt. I have to edit it in the articles. It's Ghost Fire. It can kill a core Firewalker. Thank you very much. There's Fleeceman Line. Here to save the day.
Perhaps a little late to the party. I appreciate Boswell's, pluck, putting it into play.
Well, I learned from Reed, never give up.
Never surrender.
That's
Nope.
right.
You're going to have to pry this match slip out of my cold, dead hand.
It's the Sugarloaf
Not,
anthem.
not conceding ever.
It's the opposite of how you were born and bred.
Exactly. Concede fast and often.
Yeah. Ugin is going up.
You've only got so much time on this planet. Don't spend the majority of it losing matches. Just let them go. Let them go.
Here's a Bile Blight in response to Fleeceman Line looking to go monstrous. That'll clear that out of the way. Two mana here from Brian. There is another Frontier Siege. 2 of them on cons, 1 of them's on dragons.
Good mix.
Absolutely. Into the red zone he'll come for 5. Bob's going to go down to 4. Garrick will tick up. There is another beast. I think Boswell will get 1 more draw step here with a Rakshasa Death Dealer, and he'll just simply pass the turn back. Perhaps he picks up some information here, perhaps he doesn't.
Well, of course, it reveals something.
Yep. Temple of Malady. Into the red zone, and that's going to do it. Braun Duin's going to win game number 2 here against Andrew Boswell. Green-black constellation. Abzan aggro. Headed to game number 3.
A little too much mana there, though Boswell did draw some of the cards that are insurances against flooding out. Ward in the first tree, Boone Satyr, Siege Rhino to a lesser extent. You can see that that's not really a winning recipe for him in this matchup, because once Brian gets his mana online and his powerful stuff starts getting deployed, Boswell's hedges against flooding, they're not powerful enough. Bestowing Boone Satyrs and even Siege Rhinos, they're not going to matter that much at that stage of the game. So it's really important for Boswell to start with early aggression and sort of try to concede the mid game.
Game number 3 going to be underway here in just a moment between these two players. There's some light sideboarding taking place, but while we wait, we will talk about not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 books available here of Cardboard Crack.
Yeah, the response to the first 3 books was so positive that we're out with a 4th one. All 4 are available on sale right now at $12.99 a piece at Star City Games. You can head over to starcitygames.com/cardboardcrack to get your copies of this book today. Very popular Magic the Gathering humor comic strip.
If you don't follow them on Twitter, you should. It's a lot of fun. They also hang out in the Star City Games newsletter as well. So starcitygames.com/cardboardcrack for more information about that. Boswell being on the play here for game 3, I think a pretty big deal.
Oh, for sure. I think that Boswell needs to keep some risky hands, assuming they have early aggression. Like I said, I don't think the Boone Satyr Siege Rhino mid-game plan really, I think it's hard for him to win that way. One card that I think he may switch based on whether he's on the play or the draw is Valorous Stance. I think on the draw, it's very hard for him to have mana up to be able to combat Brian's removal spells. On the play, it's a little bit more feasible. So if there's any sideboarding going on right now based on playing the draw, I suspect it's that card.
I'm both thinking it through. You see Brian shuffling up here. He looks like he's happy with his configuration. He's on a 9-match winning streak right now after starting 0-2. For Boswell, it's another great tournament for him. The person in first place, Gerard Fabiano, his loss is from the Boz. That's it. So he's beaten some very good players along the way to his 9-2 record. But as we get deep into this tournament here, that's when things start to tighten up a little bit. You see these great players run into each other on their way to the top 8.
It's also just the nature of small tournaments. And when the field's 500 players instead of 700 players, the density of quality players is much higher.
Absolutely.
So it starts early, you know. Even day one, we had some very, very good feature matches starting round 3, starting rounds 4, 2 named players squaring off. And that's something that happens when the tournaments are tilted a little bit towards the smaller end. And that's common during release weekend. I think there's a lot of players, you know, attendance in Jersey was lower than it typically was, and here as well. A lot of players just either don't have the cards yet, or are not comfortable guessing on what the metagame is looking like. So they'd rather watch at home rather than play in the tournament. So
yeah, make those changes is tough week 1.
It is. So week 1, our attendance is usually a little bit down, and our viewership numbers are way up relative to an average open. So I suppose we'll take it.
I won't complain.
No, it's fine. As long as people are enjoying it, that's all.
Yeah. And this has been an enjoyable tournament to watch, that's for sure.
It's been a hoot. And it's been really nice to see almost all of the marquee, exciting mythics in the set really show up in decks, you know? The cards that people anticipated, even Warden First Tree, which is a card I was not that high on for its standard level play, sitting here at 9-2. With a shot to go to 10-2.
It's looked much better than I thought it would. I think the comparisons to Figure of Destiny are a little unfair. It's just kind of its own card.
Yeah.
See Boswell taking a look at his hand here. He'll be on the play. Soldier of the Pantheon, Windswept Teeth among the cards he's got in his opening. Wants to get up to that fast start. That's the trick. He'll begin with a Manic Influence. There is a Soldier. Also go down to 19, but he's happy to take a point of damage to get that on the table early.
Yeah, you can see a really solid curve in his hand here. 2 drops, the mana to cast them, and a Valorous Stance. I mean, this is a great draw.
All right, sorry, with just a Swamp. Maybe a little surprising there as Boswell's going to sacrifice his Windswept Teeth, dig out a forest or a plains.
So the reasons to play a Swamp on turn 1 is, you know, he can still carry out it next turn with a forest. He does have Bile Blights in his deck post-board. I don't think he can keep a hand without green mana, so I'd anticipate this means he's trying to get to Bile Blight on turn 2.
There's the attack. Brian going to go down to 18. Tie game right now. Boswell on his way down to 17. There's Fleecemane Lion. Back to BBD we go. There is a forest and a passing of the turn. Slow start thus far. Soldier of the Pantheon on the draw. That's a nice one.
And this is exactly the type of hand from Boswell that you'd like to see when Brian's missing on turn 1 and turn 2. No shortage of really solid aggression. An answer to a removal spell or a Courser Crucifix already in hand.
It's Temple time. Little scry action here.
If you're in Boswell's seat, you're thinking right now, if he plays Hero's Downfall on turn 3, that's totally fine. And if he plays Courser Crucifix on turn 3, that's even better.
Yeah. Now, one card that Boswell might have on his radar right now that he's thinking about because he has him in his sideboard, Drown in Sorrow.
That's the thing. Brian's deck is base green, and he has a lot of mana creatures. He's got Hornet Queen in his sideboard. He's got Eidolon of Blossoms, Elvish Mystic. He's very heavy on green mana. I understand giving it cause for pause here, but Brian's deck just does not seem like the type of deck that would have access to that card.
And Boswell's hoping so as he deploys another threat.
He would also need untapped double black this turn. No
Yep.
guarantee of that either.
Here is Courser. Top card's a Hornet Queen. And this is where Valorous Stance looks so good. Because that can clear that thing out of the way. And Boswell can continue to add to his board. There is Valorous Stance. Courser, kindly leave. And it's time for the beatdowns. Now, what's interesting is that last turn, Andy could have played Sandstep Citadel or the Temple. And by playing the Temple and scrying, he's unable to add a Soldier of the Pantheon to his board this turn.
Yeah, the draw had to be literally Soldier of Pantheon to mess him up.
Yeah.
But turns out that it wasn't required.
Yeah. Gets the job done. Brian extends the hand. Andrew Boswell going to win this game and match over Brian Braun to win 2-1. Obs on aggro very quickly dispatches a green-black constellation there in game number 3. And for the boss, he moves on to 10-2 and stops Brian's 9-match win streak.
You can see that Brian kept a pretty speculative hand that game, where he either needs, if he finds a second black mana, he has access to a lot of removal spells. He had